Hello! Today we are going to learn about a super cool lady named Betsy Ross. Today's story is The Legend of Betsy Ross. Our learning objectives for today are to identify and describe significant events leading to the Revolutionary War, identify the legend of Betsy Ross and the flag, demonstrate an understanding of the word alternating, identify and sequence events in the early history of the United States, and then color and write 1 to 3 sentences about the original flag of the United States. Our key vocabulary are alternating, patriotism, represent, and seamstress. Alternating means following one after another. In the spring, I planted both beans and squash in alternating rows in the garden. If you look at the picture, we've got beans, squash, beans, squash. That's alternating. Patriotism is a noun, and it is loyalty to one's country. Many people show their patriotism to the United States by flying the American flag. Represent is to be a symbol of something, to speak or act on behalf of others. The stars on the U.S. flag represent each of the states. Did you know that? So each of the stars that are on the United States flag represent each state in the United States. So there's one for North Carolina, there's one for Virginia and Maryland, and all 50 states. Seamstress, okay? A seamstress is a woman whose job is to sew. Her mother took the ripped dress to the seamstress. Alrighty, I want you to think about the stories that we've heard so far, and I want you to tell me who helped the British colonies in America become independent, and what did they do to help? The members of the Continental Congress, okay? We had George Washington, who was going to be in charge of the military. We had Benjamin Franklin, who tried to represent the colonists tried to represent the American colonists by going to Britain and telling them, like, this is too much, you can't tax us without giving us a voice. And then he came back and he helped us decide what we could do. And then there was Thomas Jefferson, and he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Okay? So women also helped. That is what today's lesson is about. Miss Betsy Ross. Okay? What significant events leading to the Revolutionary War have we heard about so far? The Boston Tea Party, Paul Revere's Ride, the shot heard around the world, and what did we learn about yesterday? The Declaration of Independence. So today you're going to hear a legend about a woman named Betsy Ross. Do you remember what a legend is? A legend is a story that's been told year after year after year, and nobody can really prove that it's true. Okay? So in today's story, we are going to learn about Betsy Ross, who created the first flag for our new country. A flag is a piece of cloth with special designs that is a symbol of a country or a state or really anything. This new flag that Betsy Ross made is important because it is a symbol of America. It represents our country. The flag that Betsy Ross designed is in the legend you'll hear looked similar to the one that we have now, but not exactly the same. Remember our key vocabulary: alternating, patriotism, represent, and seamstress. I want you to listen carefully to discover the legend about the flag that Betsy Ross made. All right. Betsy and John Ross were newlyweds in 1773 when they opened their seamstress shop in the busy port town of Philadelphia. A seamstress is a person who sews with needle and thread to make or repair things made of cloth. John hung a sign outside their house at 239 Arch Street. The needle and spool of thread helped people find their shop. You see the sign? At about the same time that Betsy and John were having a wedding party to celebrate their wedding, patriots in Boston were having their own party, the Boston Tea Party. And you remember what that party was. The patriots used the sea as a giant teapot, dumping shiploads of tea into it. After that night, the colonies decided to work together to come up with a plan for answering the British demand for taxes. The meeting of representatives from all colonies, the First Continental Congress, was held in the Rosses' hometown of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Midway between the New England colonies and the Southern colonies, Pennsylvania was an important meeting place for colonists from all over. John and Betsy found it an exciting city in which to live, especially as the Patriots began to gather there. John agreed with the Patriot cause and wanted to break away from Great Britain. One night, Betsy's husband, John, died suddenly. It was very sad, and not yet 3 years since Betsy and John Ross had celebrated their wedding day. It's really sad. Her husband died. After John's death, Betsy decided to run the seamstress business on her own. She took great pride in her work and had become well known throughout the colony for her tiny, even stitches and beautiful cloth. When men gathered in Philadelphia for meetings, they often ordered clothing from Betsy for their families at home. No order was too difficult for her. As war approached, Betsy was asked to make flags for the Pennsylvania Navy. The Continental Army, led by General Washington, flew one of her flags as well. So she's making flags for people all over the colonies. She's making clothes for people all over the colonies. It's pretty cool to be that good at what you do. There is a famous legend about Betsy Ross. According to this legend, Betsy sat in her shop sewing and enjoying the light of a warm summer evening in June 1776 when she heard a loud knocking on her door. John's uncle, George Ross, stood before her with 2 other men. One of them was General George Washington himself. What? Can you imagine if George Washington came to your door? That'd be crazy, especially since he's not alive anymore. Good evening, madam, he began. We have an important job that needs to be done very quickly. As your husband John was a patriot and you are known to be the best seamstress in the colonies, we feel that you are the right person for the job. What do you think they're going to ask her to do? What's your prediction? What do you think that they're going to ask Miss Betsy Ross to do? Let's find out. Do come in, Betsy replied. I will heat the kettle for you, and you can explain to me your business. Thank you kindly, dear Betsy, said George Ross, entering the house, but I'm afraid that we don't have time to sit down. As you may have heard, the Continental Congress is meeting here in Philadelphia for a second time. We are on our way to the meeting this very evening. Soon, quite soon, we will formally declare our independence from Britain. We must be ready with a new flag, or we will no longer want to fly the flag of the British king. So they want Betsy Ross to make the new flag for the new country, okay? Because they don't want to be flying the British flag if they're no longer under British rule, okay? Betsy stood still, listening to his words and turning to General Washington, who had taken a scrap of paper from his coat pocket. Mrs. Ross, General Washington said, this is your chance to show your patriotism as your late husband John did. I have drawn a rough sketch for the new flag. Please look and let me know what you think. We would like for you to sew the first flag of a new nation, 13 colonies united against Great Britain. Betsy took the slip of paper from General George Washington's hand. On it was a square drawing of 13 stripes and 13 stars. Betsy nodded her head and then looked up into the general's face. Hey, why do you think there are 13 stripes and 13 stars? What else are there 13 of? Colonies! Do you think that maybe those stripes and those stars represent the colonies? Probably. Let's find out. Yes, she smiled. I accept. I will gladly make the flag. Might I offer just one suggestion, sir? George Washington liked Betsy's suggestion of a 5-pointed star instead of the 6-pointed star that he had drawn. Then the 3 visitors turned and left as quickly as they had come. So if you look at the stars in this, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points, right? But Betsy Ross asked George Washington if he was okay with them only having 5, and he liked that idea. So that's what she ended up putting. Betsy set to work on the flag the very next day, taking down a red bolt of cloth. A bolt of cloth is a roll, okay? A roll of cloth. From the shelf, she measured and cut 7 strips of equal length and width. Hey, we're learning about things being equal in math. What does equal mean? The same, right? The same size. Then she did the same thing with a bolt of white cloth, this time cutting 6 stripes. She applied her famous even stitches along the length of each stripe, first a red and then a white, until all 13 stripes of alternating colors joined together to form a large rectangle. Wow, there was so much math in that one. I have to talk about it. So they said that there were 7 stripes of red, so 7, and then there were 6 white. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my 10 plus 3 more gives me 13. So 7 and 6 made our 13 stripes. And then they talked about a rectangle. We were just talking about geometry and rectangles. All right, back to CKLA now. Sorry, guys. I got a little excited. Next, Betsy measured and cut a square, another shape, from a bolt of blue cloth and carefully stitched it in the upper left-hand corner of the flag. Days later, when she had completely finished, 13 white stars almost twinkled in a perfect circle against the dark blue background. That little section of our story had so much math, and I loved it. When Betsy showed George Washington and his fellow representatives the finished flag, they were very pleased. They knew this flag would represent the new country well. This new flag stood as an important symbol for the men who gathered under it on the 4th of July when they voted to approve their letter of independence to King George. 1 year later, in June 1777, the Continental Congress officially adopted Betsy Ross's flag, the Stars and Stripes, as the national flag of the United States of America. What a great story. Alrighty. So Stars and Stripes is a name that's often used for the flag of our country. Why do you think it might be called that? Why do you think we might refer to our flag as the Stars and Stripes? Think about what our flag looks like. It's got stars and stripes on it, right? Okay, let's get to our comprehension questions and our word work, because then I have a fun activity for you. All right, what type of work did Betsy Ross do? She was a seamstress, which meant she would sew things. So the title of the read aloud is The Legend of Betsy Ross. What's a legend? A story that's been told and retold through the years that may or may not be true. So what is the legend of Betsy Ross? That she made the first official flag for the United States at George Washington's request, right? That George Washington knocked on her door and said, "Hello, Miss Betsy Ross. Will you please make our flag? Here's a sketch." And she said, "Ooh, I like it. Except I want those stars to have 5 points, not 6. And George Washington said, okay. So that's how we had it. All right. What did the first official flag of the United States look like? It had 13 stars in a circle that were white, and they were put on a blue square that were in the top left-hand corner of our flag. And then the other part was what? What was that word? Alternating stripes of red and white. There were 7 red and 6 white. And they all the stripes represented the colonies, and so did the 13 stars. Okay, I'm not going to ask that question yet because that's going to give away the fun activity that I have for you. All right, in the read aloud you heard, she applied her famous even stitches along the length of each stripe, first red and then white, until 13 stripes of alternating colors joined together to form a large rectangle. Say the word alternating with me. Alternating. Can you say it in a robot voice? Alternating. Okay. Alternating means following one another, or think about it as your A-B pattern. I love to eat my mother's lasagna, which has alternating layers of cheese, noodles, and sauce. Okay. I guess it could be an ABC pattern too. So I'm going to I'm going to draw them actually. Here we go. You tell me if this is alternating or not. Heart. Ooh, that's a weird looking heart. Circle. Heart. Circle. Is that alternating? Yes, those are alternating. What about square, circle, triangle, heart? Those are not alternating, right? None of those are the same. They don't repeat themselves. Okay. What about this house? Is that alternating? No. Okay, what about this? Red dot, black dot, red dot, black dot, red dot, black dot. Those are alternating. Okay, now I can explain to you the fun activity that I have for us. Okay, so we talked about how the flag that Betsy Ross made, that George Washington, probably with the help of others, had designed. And we talked about how the flag represented the new country, right? The flag was being made for the new country, and it represented the colonies that made up the new country. Okay, so thinking about that, I want you to think about if you were in charge of making your class flag, a flag for your class, what would it look like? Would there be certain colors that you would use? Would you put a certain number of things? Would there be patterns? What would that flag look like? Okay, and I want you to think about that because last year, my friends in my class, actually the friends in all of first grade, they each made a flag to represent their class. And then our class voted on which flag we wanted to represent our class for that year. Okay? And it was so much fun. And if you have cloth that you want to make your flag out of, that's fine. If you want to just use paper, if you just want to draw a sketch of what it would look like, also fine, okay? We want you to have fun with this. And even I am going to make a flag that I think would represent my class, okay? Alrighty, let's get back to make sure we have hit all of our learning objectives for today. Did we identify and describe significant events leading to the Revolutionary War? We did. We talked about the Boston Tea Party, Paul Revere's Ride, the shot heard around the world, the Continental Congress meeting, our Declaration of Independence. Okay. Did we talk about the legend of Betsy Ross and the flag? Yeah, that's what our whole story was about. Did we demonstrate an understanding of the word alternating? Mm-hmm. Did we, okay, we haven't done this yet, but you're going to do this as your near pod activity. Identify and sequence events in the early history of the United States, which, like I said, that's part of your assignment in just a minute. And then you are going to color and write 1 to 3 sentences about the original flag, which will also be on your near pod. And then you guys are going to create a flag for your class. Okay, I can't wait to see all of those flags. I'm very excited. All right, guys, see you next time.